home district. I do this all over North Texas, but it's really exciting to be right where I live, where my kids go to school. My husband and my son are in the back, and they don't get to come very often and see me speak, so it's just a really great privilege to be in Frisco tonight, and I see so many familiar faces, and I appreciate those of you coming out tonight. I know we're all busy, and topics of mental health are important, especially when we're talking about our kids. So I hope that I'm able to give you some information tonight that maybe you don't already know and that you can apply inside of your home with your own kids. Before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about me so you know why I'm passionate about this work. These pictures up here on the screen all include my dad. The picture on the top right is a family photo of mine, my mom, my dad, my brother, my older brother, and me. You can tell I grew up in the 90s because I have a big old hair bow and a perm and lots of curls in my bangs. But that was my nuclear family growing up. Seemed very normal and everything was going well. The picture up on the top left is my senior year of high school. That was senior parent night. I was down on the field to thank my parents for all that they had done to get me to that point in my life. I was really excited. Saturday, when the mail came, my acceptance letter into the University of Oklahoma was in my mailbox. Life was really good. It was an exciting time. It was about to be a new chapter of my life. I was really engulfed in my own teenage self, as most teenagers are. On Monday, I went back to school. It was a normal school day. And on Tuesday, I was met by my school counselor in the hallway, and she asked me if I would come to her office and answer some questions for some gentlemen that were there to speak to me. And I walked in there, and I was met by a room full of people I had never seen before. I was asked a ton of questions that I didn't really understand why they were asking me those questions. And at the very end of the conversation, they left me with, they had just found my father dead, and he had died by suicide. And my world just stopped. Everything I had known up to that point stood still. I didn't know which way was up. I didn't know whether I was going to go to college, what I was going to do, how I was going to make it, how I was going to put one foot in front of the other. And so I share that story with you. I normally share that story when I do suicide prevention and when I do symptoms of depression. But I share it with you tonight because I think it's important to understand that we all have a story. We all have adversity. We all are going to experience challenges in our lives. And what's important is that we start building our own toolbox for our own mental health. And we need to help our kids do that. Because for me, I was 17 years old, and I had never been talked about a lot of the things that we're going to talk about tonight on relieving stress and positive, productive coping strategies and how to deal with those challenges. And so when you get to the point of something very traumatic in your life and you haven't been taking care of your mental health before then, you go into a panic. You don't know what works, what doesn't work. You don't know what's positive, what's negative. And so then you start reeling, and you might start using negative or not productive coping skills. You may turn to things like drugs and alcohol to try to numb out that pain. And so I'm hopeful by sharing my story, you will understand that all of us have mental health. All of us will have adversity in our life. All of us will experience those ups and downs of our journey. And it's just important that we're able to teach our kids to start building that toolbox for their own mental health. Who are their trusted adults? Who do they go to in a time of need? How are they relieving their stress? What are their points of connection? How does all that work in keeping ourselves as healthy as possible? So we're going to talk about resilience, and this comes from our curriculum piece that we call Building Blocks for Mental Health. This is the resilience piece, but what I really want you to understand is that mental health belongs to all of us. Sometimes we might think that we don't have mental health conditions or issues or diagnosis, so we don't need to worry about mental health, that that's just kind of a negative term and doesn't really belong to us. But the truth is, mental health captures a lot of different topics. It captures resilience, building resilience, coping skills, mental health conditions, stress, anxiety. All kinds of different things are under that big umbrella. And so it's really important to grasp that and understand what that really and truly means. So what is resilience? Resilience is not going to be the absence of distress or adversity or challenge. It's not saying that everything will be smooth. What it is saying is, how are you going to learn from the experience? How are you going to grow from the experience? How are you going to move forward through the experience and be able to look back on it and say, this is what I learned from this, and move forward? So resilience is being able to adapt and grow following that challenge or that hardship. So what goes into building that? How does that all work? Well, you have to experience stress in order to build resilience. You have to walk through the process of those challenges. So first, let's talk about acute stress. Acute stress is short-term, short-lived stress. That would be an example of a kid has a test coming up. They're really nervous about the test. They're being propelled to study because they're afraid they might not do well. So they're going to spend that time studying for the test. They get nervous. They may have some physical reaction to that stress. They take the test, and then the stress subsides, right? The stress goes away. So this is acute stress has been historical from the beginning of time. That's like when, you're being chased by a lion way back in the day. It looks different now. Now it would be like taking a test or going on a job interview. And as soon as it's over, the stress subsides. But what's happening is we're not experiencing acute stress as often. Now it's turning into chronic stress because it's piling up. One thing after another starts to pile up. It's not just we have to take a test, we take it, the stress subsides, right? Now we have practice on Wednesday. We have a book report due on Thursday. We've got overlapping conflicts on meetings. We've got homework. We've got our parents, telling us we need to do all these things, right? We've got coaches. We've got teachers. We have friends. We have social media. We have our feelings hurt because we weren't invited to something on Friday. So that's what we call chronic stress. And then we can add into big stressors that go into chronic stress, like the loss of a loved one. It could be financial hardships within the family home. Maybe it's parents that are separated. Maybe it's a divorce situation. Maybe it's an absentee parent, right? So we have those bigger stresses. So we have all those little stressors that are in our life, and then we compile on those bigger stressors, and that stress starts to pile up on one another, and that's what we call chronic stress. It's important that we're able to differentiate acute stress from chronic stress. And when we're dealing with chronic stress, we have to be able to pay attention on how do we interject these action items, these green action items, into that stress. I like to view this as like a bank account. If your bank account is constantly being withdrawn, right? You're constantly spending, you're constantly pulling money, you're going to the ATM, you're constantly withdrawing money, eventually you will get down to a zero balance. And that's the same thing that happens with our mental health when we're dealing with chronic stress. If we're not interjecting these green action items to relieve that stress, we're going to feel depleted. We're going to hit the bottom of the barrel. So it's important that we're looking at these green action items as things like exercise, like fueling our body with nutritious foods, connection with other people, coping skills that are positive and productive, doing those things that fill our cup, that help us build that resilience and help us relieve that stress so that we can continue to move forward. So I want to show you what that looks like. So as we're building those as we're using those coping tools, right? We're experiencing the stress. We're building that resilience as we go on, right? We're dealing with all the challenges, the problems, the stressors of life, and we're interjecting those green coping skills, and we're putting in those positive deposits. We're getting better. But then we can finally reach that threshold that says, I can't take any more. I've handled it up to this point, and I can't take any more. And that could be caused by things like trauma. That could be caused by things like a death in the family. Could be a natural disaster. You may have lived through a hurricane and lost your home. Big events like that can cause you to say, I can't take any more stress. There's no amount of those green dots that I can put in here to make this better. And when we get to that point, we can come down this backside in dysregulation, stress response, which is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and then anxiety can set in. And so we have to know what that threshold looks like, and we have to be using those positive and productive coping skills on a regular basis before things get to that point of, I don't know what else I can do. And so we really have to think about in our day-to-day life, what could we eliminate out of our stressful schedule? And when we're talking about our kids, we have a lot of kids that might be really involved. We might have a lot of high-achieving kids. I'm guessing if you're sitting in this room, you probably have a high-achieving kid, and that's why you want to know how to help them. They may be taking really incredibly hard courses. They may be taking some college courses. They may be playing on sports teams. They're in groups and clubs and activities. They've got a lot going on, right? They may have a part-time job. And so it's important that we're helping them finalize and figure out what is important. What's something we can say no to? Maybe you're in the photography club and that's fun, but it's not aligning with your actual goals. And so maybe that's something we can eliminate. What can we get rid of to help us not feel so stressed? And what can we be doing to alleviate that stress when we're feeling like we're about to tip over into that dysregulation portion? This is a really interesting slide that I think is very helpful when we're thinking about how our kids are handling stress. So that first column is fight, then flight, then freeze. And I know for my kids, I can identify a lot on this. Like when I ask a kid that might be sitting in the back of this room, I say, I need you to clean up this. I need you to study for spelling tests. I need you, and he just goes blank and just ignores me. And I'm like, what in the world? Why are you just ignoring me? Well, that's not really a direct, problem for me. He's saying, I'm stressed. I don't even know where to start. You're throwing too many things at me. I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I don't know what to do. So maybe that means I'm just going to turn around and go play a video game because I don't even know where to start where you are. So look at some of these and see if you can identify that your kids are doing this instead of being able to attack what they're supposed to be concentrating on. This blaming, deflecting, responsibility, being defensive. My teenager often uses this tactic where I start saying, we need to do this. This would help with this problem. This would be a good solution for this. And she will say, well, I can't because that teacher's not there for tutorials. And so we have to work through that, right? But that's her stress response to say, I'm feeling stuck and I don't know how to get out of this. So talking about the 7 C's of resilience, these were studied by Dr. Ginsberg, who's a pediatrician and a human development expert. These are really important. We're not going to go through each one of these very specifically, but I would encourage you to take a screenshot of this. We do have a handout on this, and dive more into this. This is a really important component in building resilience. I'll let you guys all get your screenshot if you want it. But I want you to think about when you're talking about building resilience in your own kids, thinking about noticing and reinforcing their competence, their ability to do something. Are they at the age and stage where they can handle it, and you know that they can handle it? You need to coach them to be able to do that. So that's helping them understand and reinforcing their own competence to be able to do something. And a lot of these build on one another. There's a lot of bleed over in each one of these 7 C's, and then building confidence in your child's competence. That's you're building their ability to know that they can do this. You know it based on their competence, but their confidence is their ability to know, I can do this. A good example of this in my life is I have a 13-year-old that just started playing school sports. For a really long time, she's done competitive cheer. She's very good at competitive cheer. I don't worry about her doing competitive cheer. I don't think that it's going to be a problem for her to make the team. I know that she can do it. She has competence in cheer, and she has confidence in cheer. But she came home this year, and she said, I want to play school sports. I want to play volleyball, and I'm going to try out for the volleyball team. And I was like, oh, this is outside of my comfort zone for you. I don't know that you'll make the team. I didn't say that to her, of course, but I thought, okay, she wants to try that. She has the confidence to know what a tryout is like. She knows what that looks like. She knows that she can go out there and physically do the tryout. She may not make the team at all. She may not make the A team. She may not make the B team. She may not make the C team, but she knows what a tryout looks like. And she had enough confidence in herself because she's done cheer for so long that she was able to borrow from that skill set and say, I think I'm strong enough to do this, and I have the confidence to try. And so it's really important that we are able to connect those dots for our kids to say, hey, you're really worried about this math test, and that's okay to feel worried, but I know that you know how to take a test. I know that you are strong in spelling tests, and you know how to study spelling tests. We spend 30 minutes on, Wednesday nights and Thursday nights on spelling. I know you can do it. We're just going to have to shift that skill set a little bit. So helping them understand where their competence lies and having the confidence in their self to do these hard things. Fostering the vital connection between adult and child. I wish I could just highlight this one with a big green highlighter and say connection is a huge part of building that resilience. That connection piece with your kids and making sure they understand where their connection lies with trusted adults in their life. Maybe that's not you as their caretaker. Maybe that's another family member. Maybe that's a grandparent. Maybe that's a teacher that they've really connected well with. Maybe that's a coach. Maybe that's a neighbor or a best friend's mom that they really connect well with. Try to not get your feelings hurt if maybe it's not you that they see eye to eye with on certain trials and challenges. But making sure they have identified for their toolbox, who are the trusted adults in my life? Who am I going to go to when I'm struggling? Who am I going to go to and say I'm having a hard time? Who am I going to say I'm overwhelmed? I need some guidance. I need someone to listen to me. And who is that? And having them understand what that connection is. Also fostering the connection of your family time at home. I was just doing a Hope Squad advisor meeting today, and in one of the slides, when we talk about connection, it has this beautiful picture of this little family of 4, and they're all sitting around the table, and they're all drinking milk and eating their dinner, and they're smiling and they're happy. And it just makes me chuckle because, I don't know about you guys, but it's really hard for my family to sit down to dinner 7 nights a week. It just doesn't happen. I've got 2 kids going in 2 different directions, 2 working parents. We're kind of all over the place. So to think that you can sit down to dinner every single night without your cell phones might be impossible. It's impossible at my house. But I have to be very intentional about when is that time going to be. Is that going to be on Saturday mornings over donuts? Is that going to be a walk in the evening when everybody gets home? Is that Wednesday dinner? You have a standing appointment. Everybody is home on Wednesday nights, and this is when we have dinner. And it doesn't have to look like, a big homemade, start from scratch, Pinterest-worthy situation. Maybe it's takeout on paper plates. Maybe it's, half semi-homemade, whatever it looks like, but carving out that time whenever that is. Maybe it's Sundays at 3 o'clock, but making sure you are without your cell phone, you are not distracted, and you're making intentional connection about what's going on in your kid's life. Develop character and a sense of contribution, finding out what's important to them on their value scale. We as parents are instilling what we can into our kids as far as their values, building that character. But eventually they're going to become adult people and get to decide for themselves. So it's important to challenge them with what's important to you. What are values that are really important that you want to stand up for? What are things that you find worthy of your own time and your purpose, right? Finding out what that looks like. And then their sense of contribution. What are you going to give into the world? What are you giving to the world now? What are you giving into our neighborhood? What are you contributing to your sports team? What are you contributing to your class? What are you doing? And how you can see that is finding out, what are you good at? What drives you? What motivates you? I oftentimes hear from people that say, I can't believe that you talk about suicide prevention day in and day out. That's such hard work. Like, that has to be so emotionally draining to relive your story and do this on a daily basis. And my response is, it's part of my purpose. It's what drives me. It's important to me. I have 2 kids that I want them to understand and really grasp onto their own mental health. So it's something I feel passionate about. I feel like it's my purpose. It's my contribution into the world. And so sometimes we can find that by saying, okay, you're good at math. We can see that by your scores. But I also know you're a good listener. I know that because I talk to you and I connect with you. I know that you really care about animals. I know that you are passionate about helping other people, whatever that looks like for them, and finding out what's really important to them on that character list. And we'll look through that in just a second. Develop those critical coping strategies. The important part right here is what you're role modeling to them is going to be really important. You can tell them all day long, don't sit on your phone all night long. But if you're sitting on your phone all night long, that's what they see. And so what are you role modeling for positive and productive coping skills? Are you exercising? Are you taking care of your physical body? Are you connected in clubs or organizations? Are you doing service activities? What are you doing for positive, productive coping skills? How are you taking care of your own mental health? How are you role modeling that? And how are you talking to your kids about that? A point I want to bring up here is for our kids in high school. That maybe they're big athletes. They have played sports their whole life, and so that exercise has been built into their day-to-day schedule. And then they go off into the next chapter of life, whether that's the workforce or maybe it's college, whatever that next part of their life is, and they don't have that built into their schedule, that exercise routine built into their schedule. So figuring out what do they enjoy doing for exercise and moving their body. That's a really important coping skill to relieve stress that we want to make sure that they have a really good grasp on. Helping your child gain control by learning those privileges that they have, right? So age-appropriate responsibilities. If you're unable, Lindsey Encinias, to make your bed, then you lose certain privileges. For my teenage daughter, she has certain expectations regarding her phone, her grades. So what are age-appropriate responsibilities that you can give them to let them gain their own control so that they have control over a little piece of their life? That's the only way that we can teach them how that works, right, is age-appropriate responsibilities, and that's how they learn and gain control. So we're going to look at the brain for just a second, just so that we can see all these different parts of the brain. Went too fast. And what is encompassed in each one of these parts of our brain. What's really important to note is that when we're talking about teenagers especially, they're in a huge growth period of their brain. And so that prefrontal cortex is not quite all the way grown to its maximum capacity. And so that's gonna affect their decision making. So when we're in those teenage years, we may be having a little bit of trouble with indecisiveness, impulse control, decision making that's a little bit off. I just talked to a friend of mine that I grew up with from kindergarten on, and she was telling me about her 14-year-old making some really bad decisions this weekend while she was at home with the caretaker. And I said to Jenny, I hate to hear that, but that's a normal part of teenage life, right? Their brain is still developing. They're having trouble making decisions. So it's just important to note, you don't need to memorize all the parts of the brain and all the functions, but just know that that brain is still developing. And so we need to be cognizant of the fact that our sleep, our mood, all that is being regulated in our brain that can be changing. And so we have to be very delicate about how we're taking care of sleep hygiene, coping skills, exercise, all of those things. When we start to come down on that dysregulation slide we talked about, when we're building those coping skills and we start to come down and we're dysregulated, we're unable to get to that upstairs part of our brain. We're only able to get to that downstairs part of our brain. So our executive functioning is not working very well. That decision-making spot, the right or wrong. So when we get dysregulated, we're only able to use this downstairs part of our brain. So it's important to note when you're getting those stress responses that we looked at, kind of that, it's not my fault, I don't know what to do, that blank stare, that, hysterical, I don't know how to do it. They might be in a stress response mode, and they're only able to access this downstairs brain. So it's important to keep that in mind to know what's going on with them. So this is a look at the brain, 5-year-old brain, preteen brain, teenage brain, and then 20-year-old brain. So we can see in all those blue and purplish areas, those are parts that are almost fully matured. So when we get to 20, we're almost there. We're getting close, right? But when we're looking at that teenage brain, we still have a bit of a ways to go. We've got a lot happening in that front part of our brain. So it's good to understand that that's not fully developed. Things are changing there. We have to be reasonable about what we expect from a maturing brain. So facts about teenage brains. Teenage brains crave adventure. That's why a lot of times we're seeing a lot of the boundaries being pushed, curfews being broken, doing things that are outside of the rules, right? We crave adventure when we are teenagers. We're still in that getting excited about the novelty of something and pushing those boundaries and the excitement. Teen brains have a dramatic response to rewards and emotions. If any of you in this room live with teenagers, you know that that is definitely true. They respond highly to that reward and emotion part. That's a normal part of the development stage that they're in. And then lastly, peers influence teen brains more than any other time in life. And that's interesting. So making sure that you're understanding what the influence on your child looks like. Who are they hanging out with? Who are their classmates? Who are they really truly connecting with? Being intentional about knowing what's going on and who's influencing them is really important. And when you have that feeling to say, this may not be a very good choice, how are you dealing with that? How are you talking about that? What is the boundary of control and response? So psychological protective factors, how can we help them and how can we protect them from some of these things that are going on? A reliable support and discipline from caregivers is really important. Kids crave those boundaries. They crave having that area that they know they shouldn't go beyond. That's really important for them. And consistency. Making sure you're consistent on the way that you are parenting, what the guidelines are, what the rules are, not wavering back and forth, because that reliable support system is really important. Following rules at home, school, and work, that's really important. If they're not, find out why. What's going on there? What's causing you to skip school, miss class, be late, you're not on time, not waking up on time? What's going on there? For the second time this month, my teenager overslept. And I had a meeting in Sherman at 9 o'clock, and I needed to drop her off at middle school at 7:55 today. And at 7:52, she woke up and said, I overslept. And so I have to think about what are the appropriate consequences for that? What are those rules to say? Why are you unable to get up on time? Why are you not waking up? Are you staying up too late? Are you on your phone or device too late? What's going on there? What's causing that? Instead of just putting the discipline out there, finding out the reasons behind. Emotional self-regulation, that's an important one. Figuring out when we're getting to that dysregulation, what's causing that? Why are we feeling overstressed? Why are we unable to manage this? Is this a normal stress, or is this turning into something more like anxiety that's causing our day-to-day routine to be disrupted? What's going on there, and how can we get to that self-regulated state with our emotions? Good coping skills and problem-solving skills. Are we utilizing appropriate coping skills? What are we doing when we're feeling stressed out? Are we constantly turning towards food? Are we eating junk food? Are we using substances? Are we turning to drugs or alcohol? Are we utilizing things like exercise and connection? Are we reading books? Are we exploring those good coping skills that we know can be beneficial? Subjective sense of self-sufficiency, that's really important. We can't just let them go out into the next chapter of life without understanding, are they sufficient to do that? Are they sufficient on themselves to be able to get their grades accomplished, to be able to feed themselves, do their laundry? And are we fueling that by what we're teaching them while they're inside our home? Optimism and positive self-regard. What do they view themselves? Do they have a positive, productive view of themselves? Do they feel like they're a contributor to the world around them? What are they good at? What are those important characteristics that they identify with? What is something that they're willing to fight for? So when we talk about coping skills, there's several parts to this that we're going to dive into just a little bit. But the first is going to be the body. Sometimes it's hard to understand when we talk about mental health that how we're taking care of our physical body has a direct effect of what goes on in our brain. And sometimes when we're feeling overwhelmed, especially when we're teenagers, right? We've got all kinds of homework. We've got papers to turn in. We've got friends we want to hang out with. We have a social life. We've got practice and meetings and clubs and organizations and all kinds of things going on. It's important that we're taking care of our physical body so that our mental body can produce what it needs to do. We can start with making good sleep habits, making sure that we're going to bed about the same time every night, that we're not doing that binge and purge type thing where we stay up all night on the weekends and then go to bed early on Sunday night and then start the whole cycle over, trying to maintain a typical normal sleep pattern. And we'll talk about what those normal hours look like depending on age. But sleep hygiene is really important, making sure that the room is dark, making sure that you're not on your cell phone right before bedtime, making sure the phone comes out of the room and is plugged in somewhere else so that if they wake up in the middle of the night, it's not easy to be distracted by the phone or to be woken up by notifications. Making sure that you have a set guideline on what that looks like in your house. And empowering your kids to know that a bedtime and rules like not having your phone beside you isn't a disciplinary action. This is helping them, set them to be successful moving forward. This is going to help them as adults to know what those boundaries for themselves look like. And maybe that's role modeling that by everybody puts their phone in the kitchen at night. Whatever that looks like, it's really important. But their sleep habit and their sleep hygiene is very important to what happens in their nervous system and what's going on in their brain. Making sure that they're fueling their bodies with not just junk food, that they are getting some proper nutrition, water, movement, exercise, getting outside, being in nature, getting some sunlight, doing things that they enjoy for movement and exercise. Those are all really important components to their body. Making sure they know how to regulate their breathing. Do they know how to do box breathing? In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. Do they know how to do that when they're sitting in class? Teach them those box breathing moments so that they know how to ground themselves with appropriate breathing skills. This is sleep. So this is talking about kids ages 6 to 12 and then teens 13 to 18. Those are the hours of sleep that are recommended. And sometimes that's really hard. Sometimes we need to help our kids understand. Set a timer. Sometimes when my teenager gets home late from practice, she says, "Mom, I don't want to just immediately, get off my phone and, I haven't caught up on all the things." And I say, "Okay, but you have this many minutes. Set a timer." And then your phone comes out of your room, right? Set a timer. Maybe you need to study for an hour and then set a timer to just scroll for a few minutes, or set a timer to do something different for a few minutes. But utilize timers. That can be really helpful to make sure that you don't end up scrolling for 2 hours when you could be getting that restful sleep. Moving into the mind, helping our kids understand problem solving. Appropriate problem solving for their age is really important. Understanding how to find the gratitude in those hard situations. Understanding that those big challenges are going to be those days that grow you the most. They are going to layer you with that confidence and competence that you know how to handle a hard time, right? So making sure they understand what that looks like. Making sure that they understand what their brain is doing. As teenagers, it's developing, it's changing, it's myelinating, it's growing. They won't automatically be good at something. They have to practice. They have to keep practicing. Maybe they're not great at calculus today, but they have to keep at it, keep practicing, and be diligent. That's really important to understand. Questioning our thoughts. Being able to say to yourself, that little voice in my head is not really me. I get to decide. And being able to have more control over that voice in our head, whether it's our critic voice that's being critical or our coach voice that's trying to teach us, we have to be able to understand how to listen to that. And so being able to question our thoughts to say, maybe those thoughts that I'm having aren't really true. Maybe that friend is not responding to this text message because they're busy. Maybe they're at practice. Maybe they're not actually mad at me. Maybe it's not anything I did. And teaching them how to question those thoughts and how to understand that our thoughts are not always who exactly we are. Understanding what our choices look like, what the consequences look like if we don't study for a test and then we don't do well. Well, we have choices, right? So we have a choice to study or not, but what do the consequences look like? And every time we make that choice, there's going to be a consequence, whether it's good or bad. Self-esteem, what do we look like in our own lens? Who are we? What makes us feel accomplished? What makes us feel good about ourselves? How do we lean into those things that we're good at? Maybe we really enjoy an effective way to get around our emotions. We have to feel them. We have to decide what that feeling is, and we can identify that feeling. We're going to look at a feelings wheel here in a second to expand our vocabulary on what we're feeling. A lot of times we might be feeling anger, or we think we're feeling anger, but it might be embarrassment or shame or inadequacy. There's lots of different ways. Our initial response to explain those emotions may just be happy, sad, mad, but it goes deeper into that. And so being able to feel that emotion, identify it by name. What is this really making me feel? And what is causing me to feel that way? Do I need to spend more time processing that? Or can I feel it and let it go and move on? And being able to recognize what that looks like is really important. And so evaluating what that feeling is, naming it, and then evaluating, what am I going to do with this? Am I going to spend some more time kind of processing, or did I feel it, I identified it, and I'm moving on from it, I'm not looking back, and we're moving forward? And how to understand that that emotional process is very important for building our resilience. Here's our feelings wheel. When I do a presentation using the feelings wheel with students, we do a little music therapy, and I play 4 different songs that are kind of from their top 40s list or whatever. And I have them listen to a minute or 2 of the song and then identify some words on the feelings wheel that those songs make them feel. And it helps them to kind of explore some words that maybe they didn't realize. When we're looking at sadness, they may think they may be feeling sadness, but maybe it's really shame that they're feeling. Or maybe they're feeling neglected. Or maybe it's that they're feeling lonely. Maybe it's not really that they're sad, it's just that they're feeling isolated and lonely. So it's really important. This feelings wheel is a great tool to use with your kids, to have them expand on what those emotions are and being able to identify them and say, okay, this is causing me to feel shame. I don't like the way that feels. And so what is the action that's causing that feeling for me, and how can I process that, change it, do better, grow some more tools from moving on from it. Then we look at personal effects. We're talking about boundaries, values, what's important to us, what charges us to move forward, what are our strengths. We talked about, like, sometimes it's easy to identify what our strengths are based on our report card, right? We may be really strong at math, and we can see that clearly on a report card. But sometimes it's a little harder to understand who's a good listener, who's a compassionate friend, and really being able to identify what those strengths look like, how to build that confidence. how to build the confidence that you can go try new things when we're feeling disconnected, when we're feeling like we're not in our connected zones. Where can we push ourselves out of our boundaries a little bit to try something new? Where can we build the confidence to say, you know what, I'm going to try out for the theater club. That seems fun. I've done something similar, but I want to try this and see if I can find some more points of connection for myself to build that confidence. What's our purpose? What's our drive? What are we contributing to the world? What are we worth? What can we find that is worth fighting for? What our purpose looks like? What do we think is valuable of our time? And then goals, talking about our short-term goals, our long-term goals. And is everything that we're doing aligning with that somewhere, or are there things that could be eliminated from the schedule? If we're feeling overwhelmed and we're feeling we're pulled too much, well, maybe we're like, well, you're paying a lot of pickleball, but maybe that's a huge point of connection for that person. Right? Maybe that's where they're getting exercise and they're building healthy relationships with some friends. So maybe say, okay, let's keep that in the schedule, but what is this club or organization, is this really aligning with what you're doing? Maybe not. Maybe we could eliminate that and that would help our stress level. So being able to look at what those goals look like. What are our long-term goals? What are we doing after this stage of life? And we don't have to have that all figured out. But what's being thrown out on the wall and what's sticking, and how can we evaluate those from time to time? What you might want to do when you grow up from the time you're in first grade may drastically change. So checking in on those goals is really important, and figuring out what are those personal goals that you have for yourself that you are working towards. And role modeling that, again, is going to be really important. Are you doing that for yourself as an adult? Are you checking in on your goals? What do your personal goals look like? What are your short-term goals, long-term goals? Can you name those? And how can you help your kids do that? So this is the value list that I wanted to show you. When you show this to your kids and you say, what sticks out to you? What's really important to you? Is kindness at the top of your list? What are the 3 or 5 words that really show up to you? Where do you find that you might have some passions that you could lean into a little bit more? Maybe it's curiosity. Maybe you have a curious kid that wants to try lots of new things, which is great, because then you can really start to determine where are their strengths. But figuring out based on this list what's important to them. Because what's important to you may not be what's really important to them. And that's okay. And letting them explore that a little bit more within the boundaries is really important. And we talk about parenting, consistency, making sure that our kids know that the reaction is going to always be the same. They need to know what to expect from us. They need to have that safe place to land and know exactly what to expect when things go wrong. They need to know what to expect when things go really well and how we're going to react to that. So that consistency is really important. Rules are really important. Sometimes we're going to get that boundary pushing from our kids, which is absolutely normal. But our kids get scared when they go outside of the lines. And so they like to understand, where is that line and when am I going past it? So making sure that we have firm and age-appropriate rules is really important. Knowing that they're allowed to make mistakes. Remember, their brain is still developing. Their brain is still all over the place, right? And so they're allowed to make mistakes. That's the way they're going to learn. That's the way that they're going to build that resilience, is messing up from time to time. And when they're doing that while they live with us, that's when we want those things to happen, right? We want them to make those mistakes that are fixable while they're living with us, so that they know better and can build that resilience and learn from those mistakes as they move forward. Having unconditional love. This is really important. Our kids need to understand that no matter what happens, what decisions they make, what they find important to them, what they find is their purpose, that we will love them unconditionally. No matter what happens, we are their caregiver to be there and support them no matter what. teaching them that emotional regulation and when to understand when it's going to creep down that hill, right? When it's going to fall down that backside, and how to regulate that. How can we interject those coping skills? How can we eliminate things from the schedule? How can we redirect who we're spending our time with? Whatever that takes to get that regulated. Modeling coping skills and problem-solving skills. What we role model is so important for our kids. What we're doing in front of them is going to have a heavier weight than anything that we say to them. So making sure that we are role modeling to them what we want them to see as far as how we're taking care of our physical body, how we're setting goals for ourselves, how we're finding those points of connection, especially when we're talking about our high schoolers. When they're going to move to the next level, they sometimes forget that they have all these points of connection in their life. They have 8 classes. They may go over to a college campus. They may play sports. They may have a job. They have all these different points of connection, right? They have neighbors that they may have lived down the street from for 18 years. They have all those connections, and then they move to the next chapter of life, and all of that changes. How are we role modeling that to them? How are we interjecting ourselves for connection, and what are they seeing us do to make healthy relationships and build friendships and give our service to other people? What are they seeing based on what we're role modeling? And then connection. Again, this is my big highlighted point. Connection is so important. Those positive friendships and relationships, making sure that we surround ourselves with people that don't always just deplete us, but give back to the relationship too, that are able to help us in the time of need, and that we can help when they are in the time of need. Positive friendships, that family connection, making sure we're carving out that intentional time as a family to connect with one another. Sports, clubs, and groups, making sure our kids understand that it goes beyond just a sports team, right? You spend a lot of time with your teammates, with your other club members, with your group members. You're spending a lot of time with those people. You're building a relationship with them. You're able to ask them for help. You're able to give your help to them. Those are all different platforms of connection that they have right at their fingertips, but sometimes it's hard to understand exactly what that looks like. Understanding that those interpersonal skills and being able to work on those is really important. And then empathy, making sure that we're teaching our kids to have empathy for others, because what's challenging for you may not be challenging for the other person. What I've gone through in my life may not look very hard to you, but maybe what my neighbor's going through may seem like, oh my gosh, I don't know how they do it. So understanding and having empathy that everyone's journey is different. Everything and every problem, every challenge is going to look different from one person to the next. I was speaking a couple of weeks ago with a veteran, and he was talking about his time across overseas. And I was thinking in my mind, there is no way that I would last one day in his shoes. There's no way I would be able to crawl across the desert injured in a war situation. There's no way. And then I got finished talking, and he was like, I can't imagine losing my dad as a teenager in such a traumatic way. And so everybody's journey is different. Everybody's hard looks different. And so making sure our kids understand and have empathy that everybody's house looks different. Everybody's family unit looks different. Everybody's values might look different. And that's okay. But we can always be kind, and we can always help one another. Making sure we're finding time to enjoy the things we like doing. This is really specific for our high achievers that are doing all the things and taking all the tests and getting all the college credits and playing all the sports and in all the clubs. Sometimes they don't feel like they've got the time to do those things they enjoy, but this is a really important slide that they have got to capture. It's really important that we lean into those things that fill our cup. Maybe we like cooking or baking or art, drawing, painting, knitting, hiking, reading books, whatever it looks like for you, collecting records, whatever that looks like, but making sure we're carving out time to do those things that we enjoy doing. When we talk about this little square of read, meditate, pray, whatever that looks like for your teenager, but for yourself too. Because without that idea of hope, that something else is driving you, propelling you out there, it's hard to continue to move forward, right, when you're dealing with those challenging times. So it's really important to carve out time to do these things that we enjoy doing. And I'm guilty of it too. I enjoy writing. That's very therapeutic for me. I like journaling. I like writing. I like regurgitating my experiences. But in order to do that, I have to get up really early in the morning. And sometimes that doesn't always sound good, but I have to make that sacrifice because I know it's one of those things that I enjoy doing and it's good for my mental health and it's part of my toolbox that I have built for myself. And so making those choices to do that is really important, but making sure that you're paying attention to those things that fill your cup. I want to share a resource that we have through Grant Halliburton Foundation. It's called Here for Texas. This is a mental health navigation line and database that you can search. It is full of over 1,000 mental health providers in North Texas. Sometimes it can be overwhelming to find a resource that you're looking for. Sometimes you're not even sure what resource you're looking for or where to start. So you can search this database on your own, or you can call into the navigation line, which is available Monday through Friday, 10 to 6. A navigator will ask you several questions, kind of find out some specifics, some requirements for you. Maybe it's insurance or how you're going to pay or what you think you might be looking for. They're highly trained to know what questions to ask to see how they can help you, and they will generate a list of providers, and they'll continue to check back in with you to make sure that they were a viable option. So this is a great resource. It's available for anyone to use. It's free of charge, so make sure you take down that information. So just to recap, I want you to know that adversity is a normal part of life. Stress is normal. If we didn't have stress, if we didn't have challenge, if we didn't have adversity, we wouldn't be able to build resilience. So that's a normal part of life. As kids work through problems and challenges, they gain those coping skills. They start to see what works for them, right? And we want to steer them away from things like drugs and alcohol and constantly playing video games and things that are not helpful as far as coping skills. But that's a great way for them to walk through those problems and challenges and gain those good coping skills. That leads them to that competency and confidence that we talked about. Child and teen brains are still developing. They're a fun creature, so we always need to keep that in mind, that they're kids. Their brains are still developing. They're still going through all those trial and error motions, and that's a normal part of their development. Parents can foster resilience by modeling, role modeling, and teaching coping skills in a loving and safe environment. So again, don't forget that what we're showing our kids is going to be so important. They're watching us all the time. We want to make sure that we're doing things other than, scrolling our phones and watching Netflix to relieve stress. Coping skills involve our physical body, our thoughts, our emotions. We need to think about what our strengths are, identify those, what do our goals look like, connection, and then doing those things we enjoy. Those are all really important components to building resilience. So I just gave you guys a ton of information. Do you have any questions for me about any of this information? Very good. Well, thank you guys so much. I think my email's on this next slide. If you want to email me questions you might have specifically, I'd be happy to help you. Always check out our website, granthalliburton.org. Tons of information on our website, from anything from stress and anxiety, boundaries, depression, symptoms for depression, bullying, all kinds of information on our website that you might find really helpful. Again, I really appreciate you guys coming out tonight. It was so nice to see so many familiar faces and be in my hometown. So thank you so much for having me.